And what if you allowed yourself to be able to go out and to sing with a dry throat? What if it doesn't even kill you? And what if you could still sing well? And I am here to tell you that when you decide to allow yourself to sing with a dry throat, not only will you discover that you can still sing, but you will discover that when you release the pressure and the need to always feel totally humid, moist in your throat, in your mouth, when you release your pressure to need that, all of a sudden you don't feel so stressed anymore, and you're like, oh, it's fine. I can just get out here and sing. Hey everybody, welcome to Take the Stage Voice Studio. Today we're going to continue a conversation that we started last week when we were talking about things that we oversimplify in singing. And we're going to continue by talking about some things that we overcomplicate in singing. And so we're going to be talking about the breath, some of the things like in our mental journey that we overcomplicate in singing, and some things about vocal science, and a lot of things to help you find some ways to simplify your singing journey so that it can be more fun and less stressful. So to get started, we're going to talk about the breath. And I've seen some fun discussions online about using the breath in singing. Is the breath supposed to stop at the vocal cords, or is it supposed to blow the sound of the voice out to the audience? And all of these different things and theories and how we talk about it, like Bernoulli effect and stuff. And at the end of the day, the whole focus that we have on the breath is to help your throat to open so that your larynx can be balanced and happy and healthy and make the sounds that you want. So if your technique or the way that you think about the breath is causing your throat to constrict, that's called the Valsalva maneuver. We don't use that term in singing, really. It's more of a physiological term that we use to describe when we are pushing the throat closed instead of opening up the throat. And we use the Valsalva maneuver all the time. We use it when we're trying to lift something heavy, and we constrict our stomach and tuck our stomach in at the same time that we close our throat. It's a concomitant tension, meaning that we commit those two muscles, the squeeze of the exhalation muscles and then the squeeze of the throat. And this can feel like it's a helpful way to sing. It might help you to squeak out a high note, or, feel like you're controlling your breath, but ultimately it's just causing a lot of tension and closing the throat. So if your principle of thinking about singing or thinking about the breath, I should say, is causing tension, is causing Valsalva maneuver, is causing your throat to close, then ultimately your larynx is going to be less happy, less balanced, and you're not going to get as good of a production. Another principle that has been talked about is that your breath is the thing that carries the sound waves, that your breath is the thing that carries the sound waves out to the audience. And if that were true, then your breath would be like a hurricane or like a tornado speed. It would blow holes through the wall, because that's how fast sound waves go. Okay, sound waves move, we're talking about the speed of sound, right? So think of your breath moving that fast. We'd be like blowing walls of the opera house over. So that is also not true. We've got all of these arguments that we have about breath. Do this, do that, do this, don't do this, feel it like this. But at the end of the day, remember that breath only has one function, and that's to help you to open your throat and to have you release your voice. So again, I don't really care how you think about breath, but there are some muscular things that we have to be really careful of. We've got to make sure that we're not squeezing the throat shut, and we've got to be aware of the use of the breath to open up the throat. The second thing I want to talk about is how we can become too entrenched in trying to do everything perfectly, that we can make singing way too complicated. And it is true that there's certain muscular functions that you need to learn how to do in order to be an efficient and strong singer. And it is also true that listening to really strong singers, like my example is I listen to Apollo Forte. He's like my favorite baritone. I'd give anything to sing just like him. But if I get so stuck on needing to have perfect technique and recognizing I just will never sound like Apollo Forte, I mean, maybe I will, but like if I have this need to be able to sound like him in order to feel worthy to be a singer, I'm overcomplicating things. At the end of the day, I've just created some sort of barrier that makes it harder for me to be able to do the singing that I want to do and to be able to have the career that I want to do. And that is that I've got this imaginary barrier that I have to be able to sing this perfectly, to be able to do everything just like this singer. And that's not going to be helpful for me. So I like to use a concept that I learned practicing yoga from ancient Sanskrit. And there are two terms that you need to remember in your yoga practice, and I believe in singing practice and in life. The first is abhyasa, and abhyasa is a detail-oriented part of your practice. It's the part of you when you're doing yoga that's thinking about the muscles and thinking about where to place your body, how to kind of use your breath and all of these different things. And it can help you to be really in the moment because you're thinking about these details. But it can throw you out of being in the moment if you're feeling like you have to do it right and that you have to control everything. And so you've got this side of you that's abhyasa, and it's detail oriented, but then on the flip side, you need to also have vairagya. And vairagya is a term that talks about non-attachment, not needing results. You can be so detail oriented and want to learn how to do everything correctly, but then you can also let go and be so in the present and recognize that everything that you do is perfect as it is right now. Your journey is perfect. The things that you know how to do is perfect. The things you don't know how to do is perfect. The things you're learning, there's no need for you to be anything that you aren't. Okay, we're not attached to results. And those two things can kind of feel like a battle with each other, but really together, I think it's the key to really figuring out what you want to do in your singing, what you want to do in your life. Balance, the detail oriented, I don't want to say perfectionistic, but just like to kind of bring the point across, the part of you that knows every little detail of your technique that's not working as well as you want it to, but also the side of you that's totally okay with where you are in your journey and enjoys practicing and doing what you love. So sometimes we make our singing so complicated that it feels miserable. It feels like we'll never achieve it, and that's not ultimately helpful. We need to simplify, accept, and be present in our singing, in our daily practice, in our auditioning, in rehearsals, whatever it is we're doing. Simplify, accept where we are, and enjoy the journey. The third thing I want to talk about is when we overcomplicate the things that we feel like we need to do to prepare for when we've got performances, for example, or auditions. We think, oh, I've got to warm up for 5 minutes in the morning, and then I need a break. And then I need to sing for 15 minutes. And then I need to make sure that the night before I get 9 hours of sleep, and then I need to have my humidifier going, and I've got to breathe through this thing, and then I've got to sing through straws, and then I can't eat any of these 12 things before I sing, and I have to get this exact amount of water, and you know what I'm talking. Oh, and I'm feeling sick, so I've got to take 100 different medications and do like whatever. And I know what you're talking about because we work really hard and we want everything to work out, and we don't want to feel like we don't have control over things. But this is way too complicated. And not only is it complicated, but it's also adding stress and pressure to what you're doing and making it harder for you to actually just go out and do your best. And so I have a few examples about this. I mean, I'm probably not one to talk in some ways, because I do have a very specific diet, the way that I eat, that helps me to feel like I'm sick less often, and when I do get sick, that it's less serious. So I really do have strong feelings about that. But when you're going to a performance, you know, people all the time ask me, can you have dairy before you sing? I don't know that there's any science that says that dairy is gonna hurt you before you sing. Now, if you legit just feel like it doesn't work for you, that's fine to say don't eat dairy. But then you eat something, you find out that there was dairy in it, don't panic. You can still sing. You're gonna be fine. People have drunk dairy forever. I personally don't drink dairy, but it's not so much just because of singing, just like ethical reasons and also health reasons. Like, don't overcomplicate your life. So here's some examples from my life. Before I go out to sing, do you know that feeling where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom? Or I have to drink water, so I have to have a water bottle by me at all times while I'm backstage, in between scenes or whatever. What if you just decided not to go to the bathroom every 15 minutes just because you're nervous, you know? What if your throat is dry and you decided not to drink water? And what if you allowed yourself to be able to go out and to sing with a dry throat? What if it doesn't even kill you? And what if you could still sing well? And I am here to tell you that when you decide to allow yourself to sing with a dry throat, not only will you discover that you can still sing, but you will discover that when you release the pressure and the need to always feel totally humid, moist in your throat, in your mouth, when you release your pressure to need that, all of a sudden you don't feel so stressed anymore, and you're like, oh, it's fine. I can just get out here and sing. And oh, I thought I needed to pee, but I came out here and I sang a scene, and guess what? I didn't wet my pants, and I released the pressure and the need for everything to be perfect all the time when I'm singing. So whether it's I've got to be wearing these shoes, I sing well when I'm in these shoes, I've got to be wearing this suit jacket, I've got to have my hair in this way, I've got to have all the sleep and the eating and the humidifiers, and I've got to have all the medicines. Those things are ultimately adding to the pressure and the stress that you're feeling in your singing, and they may help you. I'm not saying that these things have no value and that you should just not do any of them. Like, please get sleep, please drink water, but don't make these things so important that you add stress to what you're doing, because more stress is ultimately what's going to make your performance less successful. Not having water every 5 seconds. The next one that I want to talk about is vocal science. Now, I love reading vocal science. I love learning about it in pedagogy classes, reading discussions online about vocal science. But I do have to say that there is a little bit of a caveat. Sometimes vocal science can overcomplicate singing. There are a couple of different ways that this can happen, okay? One thing that I always try to be careful of when I'm reading vocal science, well, I mean, more than one thing. There are a couple of things that I try to be careful of. And I'm like this with any science. Anything that's claiming to be scientific truth, not that there's, you know, no scientist is like, I am the truth. They all recognize the strengths and the weaknesses of their research and the holes in what they're trying to discover. But you just have to recognize that there are always limitations in science, and not all science is weighted equally. So really paying attention. And the other thing that I always try to remember about vocal science is that science is going to be really helpful in helping singers to learn things about their health, how to protect their hearing, how to protect their vocal cords. But science is less effective at helping to determine artistic qualities of the voice and trying to determine how to sound. Like, if you want to sound like Renata Tebaldi, I'm not saying science doesn't play a part in helping us to figure out some things and learning about physiology. Those things can be very helpful. But at the end of the day, Renata Tebaldi didn't know one thing about science. None of the great singers that we love knew anything about science. And they just learned how to make the sound. And so if your use of science is helping you to discover how to make a sound that you want, that's really great. But if your use of science is putting you down rabbit holes, making singing feel really complicated and making it hard, yes, physiology, so important, but vocal science is very underfunded. It's very new, and there are still so many things for us to discover and learn about. And it's a helpful tool, but at the end of the day, it's about learning how to make the sound. And yes, please make sure that you do it in a healthy, safe way. And vocal science is very helpful about that. So don't overcomplicate needing everything to somehow be scientifically proven when we're talking about art. That's it doesn't always compute. And the last thing I want to talk about today is just the amount of effort that we use in our singing. And I mentioned earlier that it really is true how singing is a muscular action. You have to learn how to engage all these muscles, do all these things, and do it efficiently. That is 100% true. And there's a lot of effort that goes into it, but there's also a whole lot of release. And there are things that need to relax and things that need to be done in an easeful way when you're singing. We can get so focused on, you know, singing with strong, like sometimes I talk about, like, for example, with my students, I talk about a moaning sound, trying to get my students to really moan and release this strong balance of their voice, bringing the full depth and chest voice up to your high note. Not full chest voice for sopranos, mezzos, and altos on their high notes, but for my tenors, baritones, and basses, yes. And so we like have all of these goals and we want to work really hard to do it. And we have to spend time building strength and effort and energy. But also, like, if you watch Simone Biles, she's working really, really hard. But what sets her aside is that everything that she does is so efficiently strong that it becomes easy for her, okay? And so when I'm having a hard time singing a high note, for example, sometimes I'm lacking a technical thing, or I'm lacking strength, or I'm lacking stamina. Those are definitely true. Those are things that can happen. But sometimes I overcomplicate my singing, and I always think that I need more muscle, more strength, more this or that. And every once in a while, I just remind myself, hey, what if I tried this and I did it really easy? Sometimes that's exactly what I need. Sometimes I'm overcomplicated singing, and sometimes I just need to let the sound out. And again, that doesn't mean that I don't need the muscle or the strength or the stamina. Pretending like just singing easy, and if that were the only thing I thought about, or if that's all your teacher tells you to do, then they are oversimplifying singing. It's more complicated than just keep it effortless and simple, but it's not so complicated that it's always about muscle and always about more strength. See, there's nuance in these conversations. So yes, those are some ways where we're overcomplicated. We need to simplify the way that we talk about the breath, simplify kind of the mental game of being a singer, simplify our approach to vocal science, and simplify kind of the muscly effort that sometimes we get into with singing. So thank you so much for going on this walk with me today. I've got some other fun content I'm working on for future weeks, so check that out. And if you're interested in doing a free trial lesson with me, please check out my website, evandunn.com, and let me know what I can help you with. And make sure to like and subscribe and share this video if you found it helpful. And I look forward to seeing you and talking with you. Make sure to write down in the comments some of your thoughts, questions, some of the things that you're thinking about, other ways that we make singing too complicated or too simple. And let's have some fun conversations, and we'll see you next time.